Welcome to Sleep Haven. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. You don't have to do anything now, and you don't have to stay awake. Tonight I'm going to tell you the oldest stories in the world, the way they were always meant to be told, out loud by a small fire, at the hour when listening slowly becomes dreaming. These stories have been putting people to sleep for 3,000 years. They know their work. You are in very good hands. We are on a hillside in Greece, you and I, in some summer that never quite ended. There are olive trees behind us, silver in the dark, and dry grass that still smells of the afternoon. Far below, the sea moves against the rocks, patient as breathing. The crickets have taken up their night shift, and here, between us, is the fire. A small one, well-behaved. The kind of fire that asks for a log now and then, and otherwise keeps its thoughts to itself. Every story tonight starts here and returns here. If you drift off in the middle, you lose nothing. The fire will still be burning in the next chapter and the next. Wherever you wake, you are on the hillside, and the telling simply folds you back in. That is how these stories work. They were never meant to be followed. They were meant to be floated on. So, settle your shoulders. Let the bed hold you. That's what it's for. And let me begin where everything begins, which is before everything. In the beginning, there was chaos. And I know how that sounds, but you can put away any picture of noise and hurry, because the old word didn't mean disorder at all. It meant the gap, the open space, the great, dark, quiet yawn before the world, like a page before the first word, like a bed before the sleeper. Chaos was not frightening. Chaos was room. And into that room, in no hurry whatsoever, came the first few things. Gaia came, the deep-breasted earth, the ground of all grounds, the first solid place a thing could rest. Out of the gap came Nyx as well, the night herself in robes of dark, with stars caught in the weave. And with her came Erebus, the soft darkness that lives under things, and after them. In time came day, and the high bright air, taking their turns, the way they still do. Notice, please, what the very first things in the world were, according to the oldest telling. A place to lie down. The night. The dark under the covers, and the promise of morning in its turn. The Greeks built their entire universe starting from the parts of a bedtime, which is why I trust them with yours. Gaia, the earth, lay in the darkness and dreamed, and her dreams took shapes. She dreamed up Uranus, the sky, and set him above herself like a great blue-black blanket sewn with lights. She dreamed the mountains, and they rose, slow as bread. She dreamed Pontus, the sea, and he spread himself out at her edges and began his long conversation with the shore. The same conversation you can hear below us now, if you listen. Nothing in this chapter runs. Nothing even walks. Things simply arrive, one after another, each finding its place, the mountains settling their shoulders, the sea trying out its first small waves, the night unrolling her sky a little farther every evening, until the world was, if not finished, then at least made comfortable. And for ages upon ages, that was all. Earth below, sky above, sea at the edges, night and day taking turns like careful nurses. The fire shifts, a little shower of sparks goes up, and the sparks know exactly where they're going because their older sisters are already up there, pinned to the dark. We call them stars. Every one of them has a story, and we'll come to a few before the night is done. But first, the earth and sky had children. There were 12 of them, tall as weather. They were not monsters, whatever you may have heard. They were simply the world's first family. And like every first family, they were a little too large for the house. There was Oceanus, the great river that circled everything, with his 3,000 daughters, one for every stream and spring and rain-fed pool in the world. Imagine the introductions. There was Hyperion, who tended the light before the sun had a name, and gentle Thea, his wife, who gave gold its shine, or so the old poets promised. There was Themis, who knew what was fair before anyone had written it down, and Mnemosyne, whose name means memory, the mother, eventually, of all the muses, of every song and story, including, if you follow the family tree far enough, this one. You are being sung to sleep tonight by one of memory's 10,000 grandchildren. And there was Kronos, the youngest, who became king of them all. Now, the old stories say hard things about Kronos, that he feared his own children, that he hid them away where no one could see them, as frightened kings have always done, and that they waited, patient as seeds in winter, until their time came. That is the whole of the trouble, and I will not make more of it tonight. What matters for us is this. During the long reign of the Titans, the world was young and slow. The fields grew without asking, and time itself, which is what Kronos tended, moved like honey off a cold spoon. The Greeks called it the Golden Age. Whole lifetimes went by in it, uneventful and warm. Very like this hillside, very like this hour. And the seeds waited, and the fire burns a little lower, and I'll put on another log. And while it catches, the world changes kings as quietly as I can manage it. The children of Kronos came back, as seeds do. The eldest were named Hestia, and Demeter, and Hera, and Hades, and Poseidon. And the youngest was Zeus, who had grown up hidden on the island of Crete, in a cave on a mountainside, where the rain and the goats and a very discreet nurse had raised him kind and strong. There was a struggle, of course, The old stories give it 10 whole years, and if you want the thunder of it, you may come back at noon someday. But at this hour I will tell you only that it ended, as long troubles do, that the Titans laid down the world gently, on the whole, the way tired parents lay down a sleeping child, and that afterward, remarkably, the 3 brothers did not fight over what they'd won. They drew lots for it, friendly as farmers at a fair. To Zeus fell the sky, all of it, the blue rooms of the day and the storm cellars of the weather. To Poseidon fell the sea, that endless green estate, always moving, never tired. And to Hades fell the world below, the quiet country under the roots, which everyone assumed was the losing ticket, and which turned out, as we'll see later tonight, to be the most peaceful realm of the 3. The earth herself they left unclaimed, common ground, a garden all 3 could walk in, and the world settled into the shape the Greeks would know. Sky King, Sea King, and the still king downstairs. And over it all, on a mountain with its head in the clouds, a new bright house was raised. They called the mountain Olympus. And now the fire is steady again, and the night is fully arrived. And it is time I introduced you to the family on the mountain, one by one, slowly, the way you'd point out lit windows across a valley. Olympus in the evening. That's when I like to imagine. The marble still warm from the day, the long tables cleared, the clouds drawn up around the mountain's shoulders like a quilt. 12 gods lived there, more or less, depending on who was counting. And at this hour, you could find each of them at their own window. There is Zeus at the highest window, king of it all, with his gray beard and his famous thunder put away for the night like a coat on a hook. He is watching the weather over the sea, because he is always watching the weather. The weather is his desk. Beside him, Hera, the queen, tall and deliberate, the goddess of marriage and of every hearth-lit household. Whatever the poets say of her tempers, remember that she kept the largest family in the universe more or less at one table, which is its own kind of miracle. There is Poseidon, visiting up from the sea, leaving salt footprints on the marble, smelling of storms and harbors, always slightly too loud for the room and forgiven for it. There is Demeter, the grain mother, with wheat-colored hair and soil under her nails, half asleep already, because her work rises with the sun. There is Athena at her window, with an owl on her shoulder, gray-eyed, thinking. She was born, they say, straight out of Zeus's aching head, a whole idea arriving at once, the way the answer to a puzzle arrives, and she has been the goddess of good sense ever since. Wisdom, the Greeks decided, is a quiet thing with feathers nearby. There is Apollo, the sun's musician, putting away his golden lyre, and his twin sister Artemis, silver where he is gold, already gone, truthfully, outrunning the moonlit hills with her deer, a light among the trees that shepherds see and smile at and do not follow. There is Hermes, the messenger, the god of roads and travelers, and of every sleeper's dream errand, kicking off his winged sandals at last. Even he stops flying at night mostly. There is Aphrodite, loveliness itself, born of sea foam on a mild morning, at her window brushing her hair, and the evening star hangs just above her sill. It always has. There is Hephaestus, the smith, banking the fires of his forge below the mountain, the god of made things, of every hinge and lamp and kettle, limping and patient and clever-handed. The god's whole beautiful house is his handiwork. There is Ares, who I'll mention only to say that even he is quiet at this hour, boots off, boasting done for the day. And there, by the great central hearth, is the one Olympian most people forget, and the one I most want you to meet. Hestia, goddess of the hearth itself, of the fire at the middle of the house. She never went out on adventures. She is in almost none of the stories. She simply stayed home and kept the flame, so that everyone else had something warm to come back to. The Greeks gave her the first offering at every meal. This fire between us, on the hillside, hers. The lamp you left on in the hallway, hers too. Goddess of the light left on for you. Say good night to Hestia. 12 windows going dark one by one, and you and I move on down the mountain into the fields, because I promised you the story of why the seasons come, and it is best told at exactly this hour. Demeter, the grain mother, had a daughter named Persephone, and the whole green world was fond of her. Where she walked, things bloomed. It wasn't magic exactly, just enthusiasm. And one afternoon, in a meadow heavy with flowers, the earth opened, and Persephone went down into the underworld, to Hades' quiet country, and became its queen. The noontime tellers make it a theft, and shout about it. But night knows more than noon, and here is the night's version. Hades, the still king downstairs, was lonely in the way of librarians and lighthouse keepers, and Persephone in time, and in the old story's own words, eating the sweet seeds of a pomegranate at his table, chose to stay part of every year. Not all of it. Part. Because up above her mother grieved, and where Demeter grieves, nothing grows. The fields went gray. The world got its first winter, and it frightened everyone, the way the first of anything does. So a bargain was struck, the gentlest treaty in mythology. Half the year, Persephone sits below, queen of the quiet country, and her mother rests the fields, and the world sleeps under frost and calls it winter. And every spring she comes up, and you know what happens then, because you've seen it. The whole earth wakes up delighted, which is what spring is. The Greeks looked at falling leaves and returning swallows, and saw a mother setting the table for a daughter due home any day. So winter, you see, was never a punishment. It is the world's bedtime. The fields are not dead. They are tucked in. The trees have not given up. They've undressed for sleep. And everything cold and bare outside any winter window is simply the earth doing what you are doing right now, which is resting on a promise of morning. And as for the underworld, that has frightened so many people so unnecessarily. Picture it tonight as the Greeks' gentler poets did. A dim, calm country, meadows of soft gray flowers called asphodel, nodding in no wind at all. The 5 slow rivers, and one of them is Lethe, the river of forgetting. One sip and your cares dissolve, which is more or less what the first 10 minutes of sleep are. A king who rarely speaks, and a queen who is very good company, keeping the quietest house in the universe. Every night, when you go down into sleep, you make a small, safe, round-trip version of Persephone's commute. Down into the still country, a sip of forgetting, and back up with the spring every single morning. The fire has burned to its steady middle hour, all embers and patience. Put your ear against the dark, and you can hear the sea working below. Good. Because the next stories belong to the people, not the gods. The shepherds and sailors and grandmothers who actually did the telling. Because here is the thing about all this mythology. It wasn't written in marble first. It was told at night, in rooms that smelled of bread and olive oil and lamp smoke, by ordinary people putting each other to sleep. Picture a stone cottage in the hills 3,000 years ago. The goats are penned. The lamp is low. A grandmother is telling the children where thunder comes from, and her version is better than any poet's. The Sky King is rearranging his furniture. A shepherd on the summer heights lies out among his flock, one dog's chin on his ankle, and reads the sky like a town notice board. There's the hunter, there's the bear, there's the little cluster of sisters, 7 of them, or 6 on a hazy night. The sailors, meanwhile, are telling their own bedtime stories below decks of Poseidon's moods and the harbors he loves. A sailor's prayer at night was simple and is worth borrowing. Calm water, kind stars, home soon. This is how the whole shining system was actually built. Not as a religion of fear, but as a vast, collective, centuries-long bedtime story in which every fig tree and stream and star got a name and a cousin and a bit of gossip until no Greek was ever alone outdoors. The world was staffed. Every spring had its nymph, the way every inn has a keeper. Every oak its dryad, drowsing in the grain of the wood. The very winds had names and reputations. Zephyrus, the west wind, was considered trustworthy, and the others were discussed the way one discusses relatives. When the last lamp went out, nobody worried the world would stop. Too many hands were on it. That certainty, that staffed and tended feeling, is the real gift of these stories, and you may keep it tonight. The night shift is covered. It always was. And since the shepherd has already shown us the stars, let's lie back with him a moment, you and I, and read a few of them properly. The fire can mind itself. The stars over Greece are the same stars over you, only the names have shifted a little in their sleep. There, riding high, the great bear. Callisto, an old friend of Artemis, whom the sky took in and gave the best northern room, the one that never sets. The Greeks liked their guardians permanent. She circles the pole star all night, every night, the slowest sentry in creation, and has never once been late. There, the seven sisters, the Pleiades, a little silver conversation in the sky's corner. Sailors set their calendars by their comings and goings, and folk who couldn't sleep would count them. 6, then 7, then 6 again, the seventh being shy until counting became drifting. You may try it sometime. There, the hunter, Orion, with his bright belt, a boastful fellow in the old tellings, but the sky reformed him. Now he does nothing more violent than stride slowly west all winter, walking the night home like a lantern-bearer. And down the whole length of the dark runs the Milky Way, which the Greeks said was spilled milk from the infant Heracles' feeding, the gods' one great domestic accident, never cleaned up, left glittering across the ceiling of the world forever. I find that comforting. Even on Olympus, some messes simply become beautiful and stay. Constellation stories are the best of all sleep stories, because they never end and never hurry. They only turn at one revolution per night, and they will go on turning long after every listener and every teller is asleep. The shepherd knew that. It's why he could close his eyes. We are still on the hillside, you and I. The fire has burned lower, and that is as it should be. And before I give you the last great voyage, come down with me into the town below, just for a little while, because the gods are only half of this story. The other half is an ordinary Greek evening, and it is one of the loveliest things I know. Picture a small city in the old country as the light goes amber. The agora, the market square that argued and haggled and philosophized all day, is emptying now, stall by stall. The potter draws a cloth over his rows of cups. The fishmonger sluices his marble slab, and the gulls hold their evening meeting over the leavings. An old philosopher, and there was always at least one, gathers his two remaining listeners and loses them mid-sentence to their suppers, and does not mind. The question will keep. Questions were their favorite furniture. They kept them everywhere and dusted them nightly, and never minded that none of them were ever quite answered. You are allowed to fall asleep in the middle of a question. The Greeks did it for 1,000 years, and it made them wise. In the lanes, the smell of supper starts up house by house. Barley bread warm from the courtyard oven, olives and figs, a little grilled fish down near the harbor, honey somewhere, always honey somewhere. The bathhouses do their last, best hour, full of steam and low talk, and the particular silence of tired shoulders easing. A grandmother waters the herbs on her windowsill, basil and rue in clay pots, and the water ticks down through the dry soil with a sound like a very small, very local rain. Lamps come on, one at each doorway, little clay lamps with olive oil and a floating wick, each no brighter than a persuaded firefly. And yet street by street, the town gathers its constellation, until the hillside opposite looks the way the sky does, and the sky looks the way the town does, and the two of them shine at each other across the dark in perfect mutual approval. The night watchman takes his first slow round, a lantern and a stick, and no ambitions whatsoever. The dogs change shifts, the day barkers retire, and the night dogs, who are wiser and quieter, take up their posts on the warm doorsteps. Somewhere a mother is singing the short song, the one every country has, 4 notes and a name in it. Doors close, not with slams, but with that soft wooden agreement doors learn in old houses. And the town does what this town has done every single night for 3,000 years. Wars and festivals and philosophies notwithstanding, it lies down. It has never once failed to lie down. Empires are impressive, but the evening is undefeated. And who tends all this? Not the 12 great ones on their mountain. They have the weather and the wars to mind. The evening belongs to the small gods, the little staff of the quiet hours. And I want to introduce a few because nobody ever does. And they do all the work at this end of the day. Hermes you have met, the messenger, but at night he is something better. He was the god of roads, and at night the roads rest too, and he walks them anyway, out of fondness, past the milestones that bear his name, seeing every traveler safely to an inn. The Greeks said that when a room full of talk went suddenly, comfortably silent, all at once for no reason, that was Hermes passing through. You know that silence. It will visit this hillside once or twice before I finish, and now you know its name. Pan, the goat-footed, the god of wild hillsides just like this one. Noisy at noon, all reed pipes and mischief, but the noon is long over. Pan sleeps at night, curled in the time somewhere uphill of us, and the whole countryside minds its manners so as not to wake him. The crickets you hear are keeping their voices down on his account. Even the wind through the olives goes on tiptoe. The nymphs, the innumerable quiet keepers, one for every spring, drowsing with her ear to the water, one in every old oak, asleep standing up as trees do. The sea nymphs, 50 sisters, braiding phosphorescence in the swells for no one's benefit but the night's. Iris, the rainbow, off duty until the next rain, her bridge folded away like linen. The Horae, the hours themselves, goddesses on a strict rota, handing the evening from one to the next as carefully as a bowl filled too full. And Hesperus, the evening star, the first lamp lit in the sky's doorway, whose only job in all mythology was to rise sweetly and signal the day's end, and who never once missed a night. The Greeks staffed their dusk the way a good inn staffs its front desk. Someone is always on. You can stop supervising the world now. It was never your shift anyway. Even the heroes, and this is my favorite small secret in all the old stories, even the heroes spent most of their time at rest. The poets kept only the busy afternoons, the labors, the voyages, the wrestling of this and the taming of that. But do the arithmetic of a hero's life and it comes out mostly evenings. Heracles, the strongest man who ever lived, performed his famous labors as labors go, and they went. And I'll leave them in the noon where they belong. But between each one there were weeks of walking home, sleeping under hedges, eating enormous suppers at grateful farmhouses, and being, by every account, extremely good company. The strongest man in the world, asleep in a barn, wrapped in a lion skin, snoring like a happy quarry. That is also mythology. Atlas, who holds the sky on his shoulders at the western edge of the world. The noon-tellers pity him, but the night knows better. Ask any parent holding a sleeping child. There is a kind of weight that is also a kind of peace. He stands in the far west, where the stars lean on him, and he has learned what all long-holders learn, to breathe slowly and let the weight rest on the bones, and the sky, for its part, has learned to lie still on his shoulders like a well-behaved sleeper. They manage, the two of them. They have managed for a very long time. And King Midas, since we are letting the day's lessons soften into night, he asked that everything he touched turn to gold, and it did. And it was a disaster by dinner time. And he begged the gift away again, and washed it off in a river, which is why the Greeks said, that river's sands glittered ever after. He spent the rest of his life, the story goes, rich in nothing but slow mornings and ordinary bread, and glad of it. The moral was never really about gold. It was, be careful of wishes that speed the world up. The good ones slow it down. You have made one of the good ones tonight, just by lying still. So that is the true census of the old world at this hour. One philosopher asleep in a question, one watchman and his unhurried lantern, a town of small flames, Hermes on the empty roads, Pan in the time, 50 sea-girls braiding the swell, Atlas breathing slow under the stars, and the strongest man in the world snoring in a barn. But there is one more place I want to show you before the voyage, because no telling of the old world is complete without it, and because almost nobody ever describes it at the only hour when it was entirely itself. Delphi, the navel of the world, the Greeks called it, the most famous address in antiquity, the place where kings and farmers alike climbed the sacred way up the shoulder of the mountain to ask their questions of the oracle. At noon, it was the busiest holy place on earth, all pilgrims and smoke and important sandals. But we are not going at noon. We are going now. Delphi at night is a different country. The mountain, Parnassus, stands enormous and silver above the temple terraces, wearing the moon on one shoulder. The sacred way, that zigzag path so crowded by day, lies empty, its paving stones giving back the day's heat to the souls of no one. The treasuries, those little marble houses full of offered gold, are locked and dreaming of their inventories. Far below, the whole valley of olives pours down toward the sea like a slow gray-green river that has decided, sensibly, to stop for the night. And the oracle herself, the Pythia, the most consulted woman in the ancient world, she is not prophesying now. She is a person. When the laurel smoke clears, some local woman of good sense, chosen for steadiness, and at this hour she is home in the village behind the temple, supper finished, feet up at last, her famous voice used for nothing more oracular than good night. Even the future takes the night off at Delphi. Questions left at the temple door will keep till morning. The god Apollo, whose house it is said to winter elsewhere anyway, and to trust the mountain to look after itself. What remains on the terraces is what remains in every holy place after closing. The sacred quiet, which is the ordinary quiet, only older. A temple cat, and there is always a temple cat, makes her round of the column bases, officially on duty. The spring where pilgrims washed, Castalia keeps talking softly to itself in the rocks, saying the same clear syllable it has said since before the gods had names. An owl, Athena's own bird, crosses the moon without a sound, on wings built like a secret, and carved into the temple stone, where every visitor could read them, were the two most famous pieces of advice in the ancient world. And nothing too much. People have written libraries about them, but read them again at this hour, drowsy by ember light, and they shrink kindly down to bedtime size. Know yourself. You are a tired creature, and the day is done. Nothing too much, not even wakefulness. The deepest wisdom of the ancient world, and it fits on a pillow. Now the fire is truly low, and I have one voyage left to give you, the most famous bedtime story in the world, told the only way it should be told at this hour, gently and mostly at sea. There was a king called Odyssey, who went away to a long war, and the war happened as wars did, and it was long. And that is every word you will get from me tonight, because the real story, the one Homer sang, begins after, and it is not a war story at all. It is the story of a tired man trying to get home to his own bed. That's Some of the crew had to be carried back aboard, smiling. Honestly, of all the perils, that one sounds the least like a peril at this hour. On another, turned out once matters were settled to be an excellent host. The crew stayed, sleeping late, eating well. Giants and monsters troubled the versions of the story, and up there and new. The nights aboard were what the sailors actually remembered. Dark sea breathing, creaking in smooth sentences, the bear circling the boat exactly where the storyteller in the sky had left it, so the helmsman always knew the way. And the goddess Athena, gray-eyed, minding him the whole way, as she minded all her favorite mortals, the ones who thought before they spoke and endured without much complaining. She smoothed what seas she could, and at the end of it all, an actual bed. I love that this is how the greatest adventure in literature ends. Odysseus comes home at last, an older man, and the proof of who he is, the secret only his wife Penelope knows, is the bed he built with his own hands long ago. One bedpost carved from a living olive tree, still rooted in the ground. So the whole house had been built around the bed. The bed was the foundation. 10 years of war and 10 of ocean, and the destination the whole time was a bed with roots. The Greeks knew exactly what they were saying. There is no journey, however epic, that doesn't end where you are lying right now. The fire between us is embers now, a small red town seen from a great height, going out window by window. The crickets have slowed to their late rhythm. This is the last chapter, and it isn't really mine to tell, because the Greeks, bless them, had gods for this exact hour, and from here the telling belongs to them. Nyx comes first. The night herself, one of the very first beings in all the world, older than Zeus, older than the mountains, so old and so gently mighty that even the king of the gods, the story goes, once chose not to quarrel with her. She spreads her dark robe over the hillside, over the sea, over your street. The stars are just the weave of it showing. In her arms, the poet said, she carries her 2 mild sons. Hypnos is the first, the god of sleep himself. He lived, they said, in a dim cave in a silent land, where no door ever slammed and no rooster ever crowed. Around the mouth of his cave grew poppies, nodding, and through the middle of it ran a stream of the gentlest water, whose murmuring, and here I am translating 3,000 years exactly, invited sleep. The Greeks gave him wings, soft ones, and his work was this: to move across the world at evening, brushing eyelids. He is the kindest god in the whole crowded pantheon. He was never once angry in any story. He asks for nothing. He only closes eyes softly, in their millions every night. And he is at work right now, somewhere between this sentence and the next. And with him comes his son, Morpheus, the shaper of dreams. who can take any form, which is why dreams can be anything. A market by candlelight, a town where it always rains kindly, a bakery at 3 in the morning, a hillside in Greece. Whatever you find behind your eyes tonight, Morpheus made it for you. Custom, no two ever alike, free of charge since the beginning of the world. So here is where the oldest story leaves you. Held up by Gaia, the resting earth, covered by